Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and today we're going back to the Getting Organised series and thinking about putting together a trade organisation. So the idea behind Getting Organised is to do a bit of theory crafting around what fleets would work for a 5-person, 30-person, 100-person org. And this isn't about what ships you need to run out and pledge for. I'm not factoring in dollar cost value, etc. It's about what you might want to combine to make a good fleet for a particular profession. So one of the things that comes out of these the most is that actually you don't need as many ships as you might think. The important thing to me is really the people that you fly with. And with that in mind, if you're out there in the black looking for folks to enjoy Star Citizen with, feel free to come over to our Discord and say hello. The link's just in the video description down below. And we're generally just a chilled out group. We'd like to try and introduce people to a bit more of the multiplayer side of the game. Also, if you're a new player just watching these vids to see if SC might be for you, just make sure you use a referral code when you sign up, since it will net you a bit of extra starting cash, which, if you're looking to get into the trade game, might be your first bit of seed capital. So I'll flash mine up on the screen now, but like I always say, it doesn't have to be mine. Also, just finally, before we get going, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's watched the video, liked, subscribed to the channel. This evening I watched the subscribers tick over 5,000, which frankly blows my mind, and also it's awesome because it means that I get takeaway food this weekend. So today we're looking at trading, and I just want to get a quick disclaimer out at the start that the remit of trading and logistics is absolutely vast. Trade and logistics is effectively the lifeblood of any economy, getting stuff from point A to B to make sure all the other cogs and wheels keep turning. And in a game which is trying to build as big an economy and as complex an economy as Star Citizen is, this is going to be absolutely huge in the game. Currently though, trade is a bit limited, mostly being centered around buying cargo on your own account, putting up your credits to invest in stock, then taking it to a location where it will sell for a profit. However, in this series I prefer to focus the debate around the game we envisage Star Citizen becoming. So I would consider a trade org maybe doing some proprietary trading like we have now, but primarily fulfilling contracts to move cargo for other player and NPC organisations. And with that in mind, there are many possibilities of niches an org could fill within the overarching title of trade, so I'm not going to cover them all by any stretch of the imagination. But do please get in touch in the comments with your ideas. One of the things I really love about this series is that it can sort of work as a bit of a starter for 10 for a good debate. And just before we get into it, I'll point out that I'm going to use starship42.com to show off all the 3D models of the ships. And this is a really fantastic tool if you're thinking about sort of creating a fleet for a specific task, or even if you just want to sort of take a look at what's in your own hangar. So let's kick things off with the 5-person fleet. So this is the option for a few mates who just want to get out there and run the space lanes together. And I say 5, but there could be sort of a few more of you out there. Just to emphasise the point about there being many ways to approach this, I've actually got 2 options here, not 1. And over on the right is what I'd consider a fly under the radar option. So the Freelancer Max is one of my favourite little freighters. It's got a decent, for its size, 120 SCU of cargo. And size is a really important factor in this. So CIG have previously said that the Freelancer series will be the largest ship that can fit through a small sized jump point. And this means you can potentially find routes that maybe cut time and fuel costs down, or help you avoid danger. And given your size, this could be a good approach, slipping by potential problems and hoping you're too small a bounty to trigger a pirate hold-up. You also have 3 ships to diversify your 360 SCU of cargo, so ultimately if you get held up by pirates, you might be able to just split and run in different directions, forcing them to pick 1/3 of your cargo to chase down. I've also factored in a couple of longer range heavy fighters. The Vanguards are not some of the most loved fighters in the current game, but as the game grows in size and scale, I think some of these ships are going to find their natural place and make a bit more sense than they do now in just Stanton. For traders, it's particularly important, I think, to consider matching QT sizes, so the Vanguard's size 2 QT will match the Freelancers, and it means that your mini fleet can move everywhere at full speed as opposed to being delayed by smaller escort ships. So when you QT as a group, basically every ship will slow down to the speed of the slowest drive, and size 1 drives are a lot slower than size 2 ones. So in this instance, I'd probably focus on running higher value cargo and finding those niche routes where you can take advantage of that smaller jump gate size. Alternatively, you could pop all your eggs in one basket and all pile into something much bigger like the Banu Merchantman. The BMM is a contender for my favourite ship in Star Citizen. It's effectively meant to be a Banu trader's prized possession, and considering the Banu are the alien race obsessed with trade, it's sure to be a strong choice. As per the latest info from CitizenCon, the BMM has a fairly massive 2,880 SCU of cargo space, so you can handle hauling bulky cargo jobs. And it has all you need on board to run lengthy trade legs, including medical facilities, a fuel scoop to extend your range, a negotiation room, and plentiful space for your crew. It's well defended even on its own, with a couple of size 8 guns, a number of size 5 turrets, and space in the hangar for a fighter like the Banu Defender. And you also get to enter a different area of trade, with onboard shops allowing you to sell direct to consumers, which in the real world gives some pretty tasty profit margins. To me, the BMM will allow a group of mates to live the nomadic trader lifestyle, moving bulk cargo from A to B and taking advantage of the shops to make money while you load and unload at LZ's, space stations and outposts. But even with the BMM's payload, running this strategy might be a bit risky, and you're likely to be a pretty tasty target for pirates if flying alone. So keep in mind that you might want to build relationships with other orgs who are able to offer you protection. I can see room for some enterprising PMCs and bigger trade orgs to organise convoys, and allowing smaller groups to buy a slot to fly under protection whilst laden with high value cargo. And for me, this is one of the cool things which has come out of the series. Really, it's got me thinking about how different orgs and different groups can work together. You know, you don't have to be really good at everything, and particularly if you're a smaller org, I think it's best to focus on a niche, and then sort of work with other groups who focus on other professions to cover a wider array of activities. Now let's move on to a 30-person org. So in order to keep this video from becoming a Game of Thrones length series in its own right, I'm having to pick a lane here, but there are so many possibilities. So in this instance, I'm envisaging a long-haul focused bulk cargo operator with a couple of sidelines. I've brought in another BMM and added 2 Hull Ds. So the whole series are on the horizon, with the Hull C due with the cargo refactor in 318, and they are a really interesting ship type. The ships expand in the middle and are designed to carry a huge amount of cargo on those splines with a skeleton crew. The C hauls 4,608 SCU, the D takes 20,736, and the E takes a truly massive 98,304. The two major trade-offs are that these are space-bound vessels, unable to land on moons and planets with cargo, and they carry the cargo externally, which will probably make it easier for pirates to acquire. Personally, I favour the BMM over the Hull C because of the advantages of internal cargo and planetary landing, along with all the other things like the shops and the hangar. But the Hull D is a big enough jump in capacity to me to justify the trade-offs. The balance of Hull Ds and BMMs should allow you to prioritise keeping more valuable cargo in the internal hulls of the BMMs, while moving less valuable bulk cargo with the Hull Ds. The BMMs will also be able to shift cargo from space stations down to planet and moonside locations, where you might be able to maximise your profits further. Another thing to consider with the Hull D though is that in some of the older literature, CIG mentioned that the ship would have the capability to move more than just cargo boxes. So you're meant to even be able to disassemble smaller ships like fighters and move them using this ship. This is why I've also introduced an Anvil Liberator, as I think this org could have a healthy sideline in helping other orgs to move their assets. Personally, I feel the Liberator has been somewhat missold with all the concept imagery showing it going in guns blazing and dropping off tanks, but to me the perfect role for it is actually that of a ferry. More combat-focused orgs, for instance, might have a lot of small fighters, and as the lie of the land changes, they might need to make long journeys to get to the new hotspot of the verse to fight off like the latest Vandal incursion or something like that. Moving small ships over long distances is going to be a pain, and in some cases might not even be possible at all. And not only could you move their ships, but you could also take their ground vehicles, armour, weapons, ammo, and any other supplies that they might need. And if you're an aspiring org leader thinking about building relationships with other orgs, just be on the lookout for these ways in which you can trade for goods and services as opposed to just paying straight up credits to each other. It might help you actually form more symbiotic alliances. and this trade org would need to accept paying for protection since you lack the military arm. However, that can be better to outsource to folks who actually do that all day every day. And if you can pay them in services as opposed to credits, you keep more of your cash flow intact. I've also added in a couple of support ships in the form of a crucible to cover repairs and a starfarer to cover refueling. And this is about keeping those pesky costs under control. Realistically, if you're running any number of large ships like those at the core of this fleet, a crucible is going to serve you well in keeping your servicing bills down. Similarly, one of your biggest overheads when running cargo is going to be fuel costs, so having the ability to refine fuel as well as supplying it to your ships on longer journeys will really help to moderate those costs. I'm aware that I might be slipping into space accountant territory again, but I think these sorts of considerations are going to be really important for a trade org, particularly as you scale up a bit. So finally, let's consider what we could do with a 100-person fleet. Firstly, I'd look to bulk up our ability to do the day job, moving up to 4 BMMs and adding a Hully alongside the 2 Hull Ds. And just considering these core haulage ships, this org would be able to move a whopping 151,296 SCU of cargo. And to put that in perspective, even if you were moving a relatively bulk commodity like titanium, at the current prices, it'd cost you nearly 119 million credits to fill up. And you could close out that position at a 17 million credit profit. But that's assuming that you can find anyone to sell you that much titanium and someone else willing to buy it off you again. A Hully is going to be a huge investment for an org in-game, but realistically I think it's a great example of a ship that you're going to probably want to work together to earn as opposed to putting cash up for. Simply put, you're going to need to develop your infrastructure, alliances, and most importantly your org bank account in-game before you can really take advantage of such a huge volume of cargo capability. And given all this space-bound cargo, I've also added a few C2s and the Argo department, so you can start thinking about getting these ships loaded and unloaded quicker. I'd imagine, blue sky warning, that CIG will probably go down the road of giving us the option of either manually loading and unloading our ships, or a timer. So that one's for those of us who'd rather go off and make a cup of tea while the NPC minions worry about the boxes. But my hope is that this will offer a way out of what some would view as a tedious mechanic, but the option to really streamline their process and maximise profits for those who are willing to put that extra effort in. And a recurring theme of this episode has been how many different orgs you could build around trade and logistics. And I for one expect that somewhere out there's some enterprising individuals talking about building the best damn stevedoring guild in the verse. Just imagine what a Hull D or a Hull E captain might be willing to pay to have her ship unloaded and packed up again twice as quickly as the timer would allow. So the support division's also been beefed up with the addition of a number of starfarers and an Endeavour. And the Endeavour is one of those ships where I think all orgs past a certain size should just consider one. In the instance of trade, the ability to improve ship parts from QT drives to shields might do wonders for profitability, and modules like the Hope, the hospital module, can give you a mobile respawn point for if things go wrong out in deep space. We've also got the additional starfarers, because fuel is likely to be one of the biggest costs you'll have to consider, and on particularly long haul journeys you may lack the luxury of refueling facilities even. So having a refuel subdivision could allow you to make routes that would otherwise be impossible, or at least a lot longer if you had to factor in stopping for gas. And these ships might also be valuable trade vessels in their own right, with liquid cargoes potentially providing an additional profitable niche for you. Making our way into the centre, I do like to include at least one capital ship for orgs of this size, and in this instance I once again can't resist picking the Kraken. The Kraken's just such a versatile ship that I really hope they do a Carrack Odyssey on us at some point and bring in another capital carrier to challenge the Kraken's supremacy. In a trade fleet, the Kraken gives you some serious optionality though. You could load it up with fighters to protect some of your own convoys if you wanted to cut back on mercenary costs. You could use it to transport your support ships for loading duties at far off destination, and it's not even too shy on cargo space itself with 3,792 SCU. Ultimately, if you really enjoy the retail life that the BMMs offer, you could even apply a Cousin Crow's privateer conversion pack and open your own space shopping mall. The Kraken also offers you the ability to further help other orgs in moving their assets, so to that end the Kraken sits at the centre of 2 Liberators and 2 Genesis Starliners. And with this setup you could easily offer other orgs the ability to move the bulk of their assets and personnel across the verse, while any larger and capital ships they have just ride shotgun. I touched on the Starliner in my video covering Crusaders Day at IAE, and I think personnel transport is a really interesting niche for trade and logistics oriented orgs. My friend Rolanders loves to point out that passengers are just cargo who load and unload themselves. I'm not sure I'd want to be a passenger on one of his ships, but I do definitely get his point. I'm really hoping that as passenger gameplay gets fleshed out, we see more ships in this niche. I'd love to see something like a Freelancer variant with the cargo hold replaced by some basic seats and facilities for short to medium haul journeys. You know, just stock it with peanuts and burritos and away you go. So hopefully that's some food for thought to get you started on your journey to becoming a trade magnate. Like I said, if you've got any thoughts on things you'd do differently or other ideas you have, then please get in touch in the comments or swing by Discord. I always really enjoy having these discussions with people. And if you happen to think I've earned it, then consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you would like to go even further in supporting the channel, there's a Patreon link down below as well. I have those folks to thank for allowing me to finally experience Orison at more than 1 frame per minute. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.